Hey, and welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. And tonight we've got Scott and Shane in the house. How you doing, brother?
I'm great. Fantastic.
Unfortunately, Shane, it's just you and me. Paris is on a business trip, and he's away, but he'll be back next week. So,
Got to pay the bills.
right? We all got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And tonight we're going to ignore the bills and talk about things that could cost lots and lots of money.
Lots and lots of money.
Lots and lots of money. And it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun because you and I love talking about our forerunners, bug out vehicles. You built the Escape Innovator. There's just so many things we can talk about when it comes to cars for the apocalypse, vehicles for the apocalypse. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I want to remind you guys before we get going, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you follow us on every platform you can follow us on. Make sure you're also joining up our emergency prep and self-reliance group on Facebook, where we get down and dirty on everything about prep. And there's a lot of really cool involvement there. So get in there and get to know everybody else that's talking in there. Also want to remind you guys to check out if you're thinking, hey, what do I do with my investments? What do I do to get some gold and silver in there and keep myself protected as best as possible? Check out our friends over at ITM Trading. So go to learn.itmtrading.com/Prepper Talk Radio. They will give you a free consultation, kind of explain your options, what you can do, go over all the questions you have. And if you want, you can just do it on the phone with them. There's a ticker across the bottom of the screen with that information, but also call them at 866-257-0481. They're phenomenal. We love their content. We love what they've trained us on. And if you've listened to any episodes before, we love gold and silver.
Yeah, and the more that time goes by and we watch what's happening in the world, the crazier it's getting. And I keep hearing more and more those comments from just everyday people, how crazy the world's getting. More and more this makes sense. Gold and silver makes sense to me, I tell you. The more and more confident I am in the choices I've made with gold and silver. And I mean, this is not what the segment's about, but definitely highly recommend you guys look into it. It's if you haven't already, and if you're listening, you probably have.
Yep.
But I would just say don't hesitate any longer, because I don't think we have much time to where gold, as Mike Maloney said, it says gold and silver become unaffordium and unobtainium, and that's where you want to be when this all goes down.
That's what you want to have when everything goes sideways.
Exactly.
Then you're paying off your house immediately. You're paying off your car immediately.
But you're getting that ultimate bug out vehicle,
right? Then you can afford what we're about to talk about. It's funny because, like, for work I drive a van, and so
which is a good bug out vehicle. It's a good vehicle.
It's a great bug out vehicle. The ones that we're driving, it's a GMC 3500, just and it's painted yellow, so it looks like a flying Twinkie.
Yeah,
just cruising down the road. But it got me thinking about this topic, and I wanted to start off with legendary vehicles. And by legendary, I mean kind of more
memorable
legendary vehicles. Yeah. Memorable vehicles. So if you're watching on the video, you can see I just threw up the Dukes of Hazzard General Lee, the Back to the Future DeLorean, Knight Rider. Okay, Knight Rider is just awesome because of Kit's just.
I grew up on Knight Rider.
Good to have on your bug out team just because Kit's so smart. The AI in Kit's phenomenal. I mean, there's so many different things you could do. We've got the Starsky and Hutch. I can't remember. Is that a Trans Am?
No, it's not a Camaro. It's one of those. Anyway, I'm not a muscle car kind of guy. So
me neither. But I saw this picture and I'm like, this is hilarious. Let's look at this. And then there's the James Bond cars. I mean, this one, I really think you could pick it from any of them, right? Because every movie they're different. The Mad Max, that's the Ford. It's an Interceptor, only available in Australia. Well, at least not made or available in America. But hey, we're pretending, so this is going to be fun. The Ghostbusters vehicle, the A-Team van, which is why I was thinking about this. That's basically what I drive every day, without the spoiler, without the cool red swoosh. It's just yellow. And then, of course, Miami Vice, their Ferrari and
Testarossa,
the Ferrari Testarossa, and then the Magnum PI,
348 GTB.
And I actually had a roommate in California when I was living out there that had that same car.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And he's
Sweet
like,
item.
these are amazing because you can get them for like 10 to 15,000 right now. This was a decade ago. And
Yeah,
he's like,
now they're
it's
back up to
complete nostalgia.
150,000. Yeah, if
Yeah.
everything nostalgic right now is expensive, including the Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, compared to what it used to be, right? And
So,
especially Toyotas, which is of course where I'm going. But if you asked me to pick on this list, right,
which is funny because
realistically,
if the keys were in it and it had a full tank of gas and they were all on the lot and it was the apocalypse, what would you pick?
well, you know, it'd be the A team. You know, they've got a 60 or 100-gallon tank in that sucker, right? And
Probably.
back is wide open. You can, and it's probably like you say a 3,500. It might be a half ton or a modified half ton, right? So that it can carry a lot of gear. That's what I would pick. I mean, other than pick the DeLorean, go back in time and change things, right? But obviously that doesn't work that way, right? So definitely the 18 van.
So what's funny is you're like, I'll go back in time and change things. If I took the DeLorean, I pick the same two vehicles. I would pick the DeLorean and take whatever I could find, the oldest denominations I could find, and go back in time and buy more gold and silver or buy other stuff to come back that could help me out, right? For when SHTFs. And then I would just keep repeating that cycle. Or maybe go back farther in time and buy a bug out location.
Go back to 72, 73 when gold was $42 an ounce and load up.
And just load up and just have some have some fun with it. But realistically, I would pick the 18 van just for the sheer versatility of
it. Yeah, absolutely. Utility of it.
The utility is amazing, but it's versatile, like because they had great suspension on it. I mean, just go back and watch.
Well, obviously, it's jumping every off.
It's jumping everyone once in a while, so it has good suspension. It's got a strong engine.
I don't remember it breaking down. Right? I remember breaking down.
Never broke down.
But, speaking realistically, I was a minivan owner for many years. Right, 5 kids. You gotta have a minivan, and just the practicality of even for a bug out vehicle, pull the seats out of that thing, and you got a lot of space, and that's kind of I'm not want to spoil it for everybody here by just going right to the end from the beginning here. Is I've done a lot of modifications over the years to my vehicles and partially with the idea of creating a great bug out vehicle, but really just for having fun off road and getting places. But in doing that, you create some vulnerabilities, you create some unreliabilities, you create more maintenance. But you can tend to have more fun with it. But in a bug out situation or an apocalypse situation, if you're building weaknesses into your vehicle, that's definitely a problem. Obviously, the idea is to modify it so you're creating a more robust vehicle, more capable vehicle. But in my experience, say for example, you put a higher end suspension, which I did on my 4Runner, and it makes it so much more capable, especially like we called it the Preppercon Evader, right? Because it could travel over rougher ground at higher speeds because of the superior suspension. But
you were flying down dirt roads, uneven,
so much fun.
bumpy,
so much
rutted.
Fun. And that can be important in an SHTF situation, right? It can really be important to be able to escape and evade quickly, quietly, with speed over rough terrain. Absolutely. However, the problems I've had with that suspension system over the years is that it is very high maintenance. Mm-hmm. And I was able to do some of the work myself, but others I had, sometimes I had to go seek a professional to rebuild those shocks sometimes and machine the shafts and so forth. And it's just higher maintenance. The specs on the system I had was to rebuild those shocks after 1,000 miles off-road. 1,000 miles off-road, rebuild the shocks, which is again kind of a race shock, but not really. But even on road, it was recommended to build it every 30 or 40,000 miles, which is, a stock shock will last 150,000 miles or somewhere around there without, then you replace it. You don't rebuild it, right?
Well, that's the thing is like the closer you get to stock in looking for your ideal vehicle, the better it's going to perform long run.
Exactly.
Because everything is built and designed, especially I'm gonna throw it out now. I'm like, if you look at the Toyota Hilux line, which goes into the 4Runners, goes into the
trucks.
pickups, turned into Tacomas here. But if you look at that line, legendary vehicles, those things go and go and go.
And
And
we've seen them get tortured, dropped off buildings and still run. I saw a video the other day where there was an old Toyota sitting in a field, and most of the body of the frame was rusted away, and they started the freaking engine up. They hooked up a battery, hooked fuel to it, and it started up after who knows how long it was sitting there, but just absolutely amazing. So that's exactly what I'm getting at, Scott, is that there's a lot you can do to really improve the performance, but with a stock vehicle, if you treat it right and you're not just trying to go rally it, off road like I was trying to do the 4Runner, and just know the limitations of where, how much you can load it down, what you can do to it, it's going to probably serve you better than a highly modified vehicle, unless you go even further over the top and spend even more money with even more durable components and redo the entire suspension, which gets crazy expensive and just
super
stupid.
expensive.
And so not practical for most people. And I really don't even recommend it to, there's a few things you can do that are simple. We can talk about those types of things that keep it reliable, that improve the performance and the ability to escape and evade and so forth and haul heavy loads. There's things you can do that won't really compromise the reliability of a Toyota. And I'm speaking from Toyota in particular, because that's what I've owned for years. And
I've been through a number of different types of vehicles, and the ones that I've appreciated the most because of the durability, the longevity, have really come down to Toyota. I had a Toyota Corolla Tercel, like 1980-ish. That thing was awesome.
Yeah,
gutless, but awesome.
Yeah.
But I've also had Volkswagens. I've had so I had a Jetta, I had a Rabbit, I had Ford F-150.
I can't see you in a Rabbit here, Scott.
It was basically I traded
your high school days.
Something super cheap. No, it was when I was broke in college, and it was it was garbage. I had it for like a month and a half. But yeah, I've had an Isuzu Rodeo. That was an awesome vehicle.
Didn't know that's a good vehicle. That's a good vehicle. Yeah, absolutely.
Isuzu makes a good quality vehicle, and that was awesome. What's funny about that is Honda made the same vehicle into the Passport, and Isuzu built the whole thing, but Honda's like, no, this is the Passport.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I've driven a lot of different cars. I've driven super nice Cadillacs. I've driven some pretty junky cars, and honestly, the ones that have had the least problems have always come back to Toyotas. My 4Runner was phenomenal. My Sequoia, we call it the tree. It just keeps going. It's almost 260,000 miles on it.
I think the Sequoia is actually I think last Consumer Reports, I think the number one most reliable vehicle on that list was the Sequoia.
Yeah, it's had problems with the luxury items in it, but none of the engine components, right? None of the standard components that make the vehicle move have had issues, and it's just requiring your ongoing maintenance.
And that's the important thing is getting out there and be able to get home, right? That is the most important thing. If the rear defroster stops working, who cares?
No big deal.
Right?
You can survive that.
Exactly, the remote mirror controls stop working, those types of things, if they stop working, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get home. That's the most important thing. So there's a lot of vehicles to avoid that will absolutely get you stranded. But I've never ever been stranded in any of my Toyotas. And so that's for me is number one, reliability and trustworthiness, just to be able to trust that vehicle wherever you go.
Well, and also if I've got to get parts for it in an apocalyptic situation, you're going to be looking at pick and pull for the rest of your life, right? You're not going to be able to order things. So it has to be a vehicle that there's a lot of supply of. And
there
honestly,
are lots of 4Runners out there.
There's a ton of 4Runners out there.
Yeah.
And what's horrible is they're not getting any cheaper right now.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
People are catching on.
Anything, and kind of like I was getting to, is anything nostalgic Toyota has gotten crazy expensive. And, I think most people will argue with us, bug out vehicle needs to be carbureted. I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. But I think for the majority of what we're going to encounter, I'm not too worried about that. I
Yeah.
do have a couple of carbureted motorcycles, scooters, right? That's my carbureted vehicle at the moment. But on my list, if we're talking about, vehicles we'd love to own, I would love to have a 1980 early 80s FJ, carbureted, stock, rebuilt. Not obviously great for pulling or anything or trailering anything, but
Well,
it
that's
is
not what you want to do
that's
anyways.
that's not what I want to do it anyways. And no, not great for for speed, but for off road and just for reliability. I mean, but the thing is, they're crazy expensive right now. You get something, anything like that's been restored, rebuilt, just so expensive.
Yeah, it's not a wise
Yeah.
purchase in today's economy.
No, and anything carbureted at this point, you start looking for anything carbureted, the prices have gone up pretty crazy. Even, you look toward an American vehicle, which I'm not very fond of just for reliability and such, but something 70s, 80s carbureted is relatively easy to fix. So I shouldn't be so picky and, wanting a specific FJ or even an older truck. Like they call them the Hilux in the USA, they just call them the Toyota truck, right?
Yep.
70s, 80s, carbureted, 4-cylinder, underpowered, but reliable as all get out.
That's the thing. You don't need a lot of power. You're especially in an apocalyptic scenario, you're just needing to get around, right?
It's nice, obviously, but like you say, yeah, if you can just tool around with a 4-cylinder, preferably diesel, then make your own
That's my next thing. Is like
biodiesel from
the
vegetable
problem
oil,
in the
waste
apocalypse
oil.
is you're going to run out of fuel unless you know how to make it. But biodiesel, anybody can make, right? Go YouTube it right now, and you'll find probably 1,000 videos on how you can make your own biodiesel. There's also videos on how you can recycle plastics into diesel, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different things you can do that if you have an older diesel, and especially one that doesn't require DEF, so like pre-90s, I think
Exactly.
86 is when
What a scam.
that came in. And what's interesting about that, I found this out just last week, and I need to verify this for sure, but one of the main ingredients in DEF is actually
It's
byproduct.
urea.
It's urea.
Yeah.
And you know where they get it?
It's a byproduct from, I can't remember.
The number one place that they're buying it from is Russia. It's Russian hog piss. So I
think there's other ways to create it, but
vehicles,
yes, in general, it is
that's where it
created
comes from
that.
hog
Yeah.
farm. But it's one of the byproducts. They filter out the other stuff so they can put this in your engine. And really, honestly, what does it do? Well, it's better for the environment. Well,
It just cleans the exhaust system, I believe. Is that how it works with these newfangled diesel?
But I'm like, yeah, go with the older ones, pre-86. If and what's funny is Dodge went all the way up to 92 with the older diesels. But you can actually take those old engines and you can find them just about anywhere. The vehicles rust out from underneath them pretty bad. But you could take the older diesels and run those things. That's your workhorse vehicle. And as far as an apocalypse scenario, like move that engine into like a Ram Charger or an old Bronco or an old K5 Blazer, right? Then you can move around and you can pull stuff.
When you were talking about parts too, another reason I love Toyotas is, yes, parts can be expensive and maybe a little harder to find, especially now. Most of the parts are made in Japan, not foreign anyway, made foreign, and but you don't have to fix Toyotas. You just don't have to fix them nearly as often, so you don't need the spare parts. I mean, that's been my experience, and whereas Toyotas in particular, like the Land Cruiser, is made for a duty cycle of 250,000 miles before you need to change major components. Most other vehicles, 150,000 miles. But there are plenty of examples of Land Cruisers and Tundras with the 5.7 liter VA motor going 1,000,000 miles on minimal timing belt changes and minimal maintenance. I would say on regular maintenance and even neglecting some things. But yeah, just very minimal. If you take care of it, you don't abuse it. And those parts, that car will just still keep running. So then again, that's why I choose Toyota in particular, because it's just far more reliable. over a longer term. And one thing I say all the time is, so say you buy a brand new Jeep, for example, and I don't mean to bang on Jeep, they got some pretty nice vehicles, but not nearly as reliable as Toyota. I think you take my 2005 4Runner, put another 10 years under it, or I have a 2009 Land Cruiser, put another 10 years under it, it's still going to be more reliable than that Jeep 10 years down the road. And that's what I love about Toyotas.
You've probably heard the saying, if you want an adventure, get a Jeep. If you want to come home, make sure it's a Toyota.
It's a Toyota, yeah.
But
Jeeps are definitely better in certain things off-road, no doubt.
Well, and you're also going to find, it's designed really more for off-road, and it's designed for you to buy it and upgrade it. Immediately swap out the suspension immediately.
And that's my opinion, yeah.
And that's the challenge with it is if you want it to do what it's capable of, you've got to put another 5-10 grand into it right off the floor.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the Jeep Wrangler in particular, because it has solid front axle, solid rear axle. Most Toyotas have solid rear axle, independent up front. Independent is not as durable off-road as a solid axle. So for a bug-out vehicle, typically, yes, you'd want a solid axle. So that is one weakness of Toyota. However, like I was saying earlier, if you drive it properly and don't abuse it, then you're not going to have those kind of issues. If you find yourself in that situation where you need to evade it and you're at high speeds and you're going over bumps or you're having to crawl over rocks to get to a certain place, yeah, the Jeep is going to be more durable that way. However, overall, just not reliable enough for me to own a Jeep.
So that's where
or really any other vehicle, not just picking up Jeep, any other vehicle.
Yeah, that's where the pivot hits. Now you have to look at everything from the scenario of where are you going, right? We talk to everybody about planning your reaction or response to different things. So if there's an EMP or there's an invasion or there's a scenario, right? Maybe there's a nuke. Where are you taking your vehicle? As long as your vehicle is working, where are you taking it? You're no longer going down to the grocery store and back, right? You have a small window of maybe 5 hours to go and ransack the grocery stores, before they realize what's happened. And when I say ransack in the first 5 hours, I mean take cash and go buy everything from the cash register. The person's like, I don't know what to do with all the cash. Write down the numbers. Keep track. It's your job now, right? And buy last minute additional stuff and then get out of Dodge. But at that point, you've got to look at where am I going and what am I using my vehicle for? And that's when you want to start doing enhancements, picking a good vehicle that's a daily driver, but that's capable of getting you to where you're going. And once you get there, dude, here my ideal vehicle at that point is in a horse.
That's on my list because right there.
Unlimited fuel.
My feet and my horse. And my pedal mountain bike, right? I've got a little carbureted Yamaha motorcycle, TW200. That'll withstand an EMP. That'll get me where I need to go. Won't get my family, but at that point, I'm at my bug out location.
But it fulfills the need. It serves a need. It meets the demand that you're going to have for that moment. And so when you're thinking about, okay, where am I going? What am I doing? My first scenario is always get home and stay home. Second scenario is move to one of our secondary locations. That secondary location, it's going to be at least 100 miles away from a city, right? So you have to think, okay, am I going to always have enough fuel in there to get at least 100 miles away from the city? And that's not like the big city, like, okay, I'm in LA, I need to get 100 miles. You're still kind of in LA.
Yeah,
like
you want to be 200 miles.
Major. You want to get a minimum of 100 miles away from the last big city. Right. So ideally, you've got to have a large gas tank and never let it go below half. And you've also got to have some basic tools in the vehicle at all time. I would say a secondary belt for your timing and everything else.
Those things that'll actually shut you down and keep you from moving.
Yeah. And those, like, have kits in your car with the stuff and know the basic maintenance. Like, have a tire patch kit. Have an air compressor so you can refill your tires. Like, what's the point of having all this stuff if you can't keep moving?
And obviously keeping your vehicle well maintained. If you don't know when, if you have a timing belt or timing chain on your vehicle, you better find out. And at what mileage is it recommended to change it? And if you're beyond that, I would recommend you change that immediately.
immediately.
Timing belt or timing chain, either way. Timing chains will be more durable. You can go much longer miles. You can go much longer without changing timing chains. Have service intervals, but I would say when the maintenance is recommended, do it. Get it done, and you're going to have a very reliable vehicle. And and I think that should give most of you confidence out there. Whatever vehicle you have, keep it stock and use it the way it's intended. Don't go Mad Max with a Honda Civic, right? It's go Mad Max with a lifted Tacoma with the right modification. So I've got a short list of modifications that I recommend that aren't terribly expensive, that you can do over time, that are going to add to the resiliency of your vehicle and capability as well, but not make it vulnerable or fragile. So first of all, people want to get a truck or a 4-wheel drive, they want to lift it, right? They want to put a lift kit on, they want bigger tires. That's fine as long as you keep it minimal. Like for example, with the Toyota, I wouldn't recommend going over 2 inches with the Toyota because of the front independent suspension. So you could do a small lift with higher quality shocks, say Bill Stein shocks or something that are a larger diameter. You're going to give a better ride with a small lift. And with tires, again, with independent suspension, the bigger the tires on it, the more leverage you're putting on the system, that you can damage something, you can break something, CV joints, the steering, all of them kinds. So
and Toyota's LBJs are like notorious.
They have some weaknesses. Although if you're driving it right, you're not abusing it, it's going to work just fine. If you're putting a pedal to the metal trying to get over an obstacle, you're going to break something. So if you know when to stop and when to pull the winch out, so that's on my list as well. So better shocks, a little bit better shocks, maybe a small lift, and just the next size tires up than stock. Just go up a little bit larger than the stock with a nice all-terrain tire, a really durable, tough tire. That's the first of my recommended modifications. Next would be higher quality skid plates. The skid plates that come on 4-wheel drives like Toyotas are pretty flimsy. They're not meant for serious off-roading. And if you don't lift your vehicle to the sky, you kind of have to armor the underside in case you set it down on something like a rock or just the dirt, and you don't want to break anything. So a good set of skid plates, maybe even sliders along your doors, on the sides of your vehicles, that if you get hung up, you can slide the thing off. You can push it off, or pull it off with another vehicle or whatever. But as for upgrading the electronics or drivetrain, I don't really recommend anything. I would say keep that stock. You could engineer some weaknesses into the system that way, but a winch, I think, would be a great addition to the front of that vehicle, and a pull pow, some other anchor that you can, instead of gassing your way through a situation, you pull your way through it where you're not going to damage anything. So those are really the only things I would add. Maybe add some lights for a little bit better visibility at night. But armor and maybe bumper, front and rear bumper, although that adds a lot of weight, which can be hard on the suspension, especially if you're going to throw a lot more weight in the vehicle.
The key
you can do upgraded springs.
To do your modifications in a way that it doesn't add a lot of to your vehicle, right? Being people aren't going to look at your car and be like, I need that, I'm going to take it. And people and it's not going to be so noticeable because it's your daily driver also. So noticeable that everywhere you drive, everyone knows who you are and where you came from and where you're going, right?
Or you look like you're prepared for the apocalypse, right? Oh, look at him. He's got a cage built around his windows. He's got body armor around his vehicle,
Right? Or you've got a sticker that says zombie something on your zombie slayer or something.
Oh yeah, we know a few of those.
So
good, buddy.
The key is to keep whatever you're doing on the down low and keep your vehicle unsuspecting.
A sleeper, like a sleeper, like a fast car, right? You modify it, but it looks stock, so it's a sleeper.
That's why I'm like I'd like to keep everything as stock as possible. I would do an improvement on the suspension, slightly larger tires, not big, not huge, but make sure they're all terrain. And then I would do in the back, because I'm always going to be doing SUVs. In the back, I would do a drawer system, and I would have an air compressor, tire patch kit, for huge into first aid, water. I would have extra gas cans full, and if you can, get a secondary gas tank. Like on a lot of vehicles, you can add a secondary gas tank underneath, especially the SUVs. Toyota has one that takes you almost up to 80 gallons for the 4Runner. And I'm like, between the
and
two,
Land
that's
Cruiser and such.
fantastic.
Yeah, my Tundra has a 38-gallon tank stock, which is pretty darn big. So I got a lot of
That's
range on
huge.
that. But
Uh-huh.
another thing I would add is on the Toyotas, a rear locker. Some 4Runners, some Tacomas actually come with an electronic locker for the rear, and that makes your vehicle so much more capable, getting you out of stuck situations or keeping you from getting stuck. If not, you can add air lockers, you can add different kinds of locking differentials, which, if you don't know what that is, it actually keeps the power from the drivetrain going to both tires, both wheels, so that if one slips, the other one still has traction. So that is, and there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. So do some research on that. But
Well, that's a funny thing is like, you can get a long ways in a 2-wheel drive if you have a rear locker.
That's true.
You can really go a long ways.
That's true. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's going to outperform all-wheel drives. It's going to outperform pretty much every other standard practice vehicle out there, just by having a rear locker. Now, in extreme scenarios, you're gonna need more, right? You're gonna want to have the 4-wheel drive, and if you can have all four or both axles locking, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
But having a rear locker, if you only have a 2-wheel drive and that's all you can get, or all that makes sense, if you can get a rear locker in there, get a rear locker in there, because that will make a huge improvement for wherever you're trying to go.
And so on the other extreme, as we're kind of coming up
Okay.
to the end, is my ultimate apocalypse vehicle would be a Unimog. And you're familiar with the Unimog, essentially a commercial type vehicle with 40-inch tires, locking differentials, monster axles, and diesel motor, and just really meant to haul heavy loads off road. It's not fast. It's
not a daily driver at all.
Not really daily. Although the new ones are very nice.
They're very cool.
They're very expensive, but that would be my ultimate apocalypse vehicle. I think they're for transporting people and stuff over rough terrain. But again, not very fast, not a great vehicle to evade, not very nimble.
No.
That's where I really love my 4Runner, Land Cruiser, Tundra, just mostly keeping them stock. Unless you have a really specific need and you need to do something specific, and you need the extra clearance, you need the bigger tires, the lockers, so forth. And if you're an off-roader and you love to off-road, you're probably already well prepared. But look at those weaknesses in your rig that you see breaking, things that are breaking all the time or you're having issues with, and I would fix that as soon as possible, so you have a vehicle that is ready at any moment.
Well, and if you do make any adjustments, make sure and double check this, that your jack is going to be able to lift your vehicle high enough to be able to maintain those changes. Your stock jacks that you get with most vehicles cannot lift your vehicle. Once you've lifted your vehicle, if you've gone over an inch, oftentimes you won't be able to get enough clearance to get your tires on and off.
Yeah, no, that's true. And if you do get bigger tires, make sure you get 5 and not just 4.
Right.
You need a full-size spare, people, especially when you see a huge Jeep lifted with 38 and it still has the stock tire on the rear.
Then it's just a fancy mall crawler.
Exactly. It's just a grocery getter at that point, because once you get a flat and you've got big tires and you got one tiny little spare on there, if it's full-time 4-wheel drive, you're going to break things. And if not, you're just going to still stay stuck if you don't have a full-size spare.
That reminds me, another thing is make sure you have in every vehicle, not just your apocalypse vehicle, make sure you have methods of putting out fires, aka extinguishers. I was actually driving today. This is the craziest thing. Driving home from work today, I saw a Dodge Journey on fire, completely front end, completely just engulfed. Thankfully, everybody had gotten out, and they were standing about 150 feet behind the vehicle, just kind of like looking, watching their entire lives burn up, basically. And then I also saw a couple of vehicles. I don't know how they did this. They went off the freeway, over the hump on the side of the road, into the ditch, and up over the ditch into the canal. I don't know what happened.
Going fast.
But they were, 2 vehicles. I'm like, that's just insane. So the other part of this is be as aware as humanly possible, both now and in the apocalypse. Put your mobile down. Get all your distractions out of the way, especially now. I see more and more. I put a couple 100 miles on every week, actually 150 a day, basically. Yeah. I see so many people driving distracted. That is an apocalyptic scenario in everybody's life right now that could be happening to you. That's a doomsday you don't want to deal with every day, right? You don't want to be in an accident because someone wasn't paying attention, or heaven forbid, it's you that's not paying attention. Pay attention, right? Now and in the apocalypse, because your job is to keep yourself safe and your family safe and everyone around you safe. And so make sure you have that. Make sure you're aware. Make sure you're maintaining your vehicle. Make sure that you have a fire extinguisher. Make sure your jack works. And then for me, like I was saying, lots of first aid kits. I can't tell you how many times I've been the first one on a accident scene with a kit, and nobody else has a kit. And there's been a couple of the cars that got there first, and I'm the first one with a kit to be able to help stop the bleeding until the paramedics get there. You don't know how far away they're going to be.
Go heavy. There's no reason to not keep your vehicle loaded up with everything you possibly might need, depending on where you're going. If I'm going, more than 100 miles in a day, I make sure I have extra water and, like you say, first aid kits and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually carry a folding bike in my Tundra.
Yeah,
in case.
So you got space for that, and that's
exactly. I've got
awesome.
space for it, and space for extra fuel as well.
So when you're thinking about your vehicle, when you're thinking about your preps, like we had some fun today talking about some ideal things. But from the very most basic things forward, make sure you can cover your bases. Have that bag that's your get home bag. Have a tire patch kit. Have emergency contact information. Have a secondary supply for your battery bank for your phone, right? Other things to help you get through whatever could happen. And then once you get confident with that stuff, now you start packing in additional things, pumps, additional foods and waters, and additional tools, and then you can go crazy. But make sure you get the basics taken care of, and make sure that you're not doing something that you don't know how to maintain or take care of. By that meaning, if you don't know how to maintain your tires, if you don't know how to change your tires, you don't know how to swap tires out for you get a flat on the side of the road. Go practice that. Go learn how to do that while things are still good. Because in a disaster scenario, it could feel like the end of the world, even though it's just a Tuesday and you're late for work because you got a flat.
And it's raining.
Or it's in high traffic, right? Learn how to get off the side of the road and get out of the way.
Yeah.
Right. I've had to change many tires on a busy freeway, and it's never been mine, thankfully.
Yeah.
But there's not always going to be someone that's going to pull up and say, "Hey, can I help you?"
And I guess one last little comment is make sure you have recovery gear in your vehicle.
Oh, yes.
That someone can pull you out a strap, shackles and so forth, that kind of recovery gear that you need to get yourself out. Traction boards, wherever you may find yourself.
And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't keep going in life without making the adjustments you need to help improve your situation, right? Instead of planning that crazy over-the-top vacation with your whole family, maybe go get your emergency antibiotics taken care of. Check out jacemedical.com, save $10 at checkout with the code PrepperTalk. And that'll give you the stuff you need for when you go on those trips, or when you don't have a pharmacy nearby, or when you're out in the backcountry, or maybe when the apocalypse hits. Those are the types of things you're going to wish you did. So take the time now and get it done now. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of Prepper Talk Radio. Thanks for being the ready-minded, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
See you next week.